Hey guys, welcome back for another book review video. Today's video, as you saw in the title, I'm going to kind of give my thoughts on Song of the Dryad by Natalia Leigh. She is also an author tuber. I guess now she's doing a lot more than just writing stuff because she has her own editing company, which is Enchanted Ink Publishing. Definitely check them out. Like, as far as I can tell, their work is good. And I'm pretty sure I'm way too late to ask her to be my editor. Regardless, I'll put a link to her channel below so you can check her channel out if you don't know about her already. And obviously I encourage you guys to read Song of the Dryad for yourself and make your own opinions because everybody's going to be different. I guess the tag for this one's going to be, just because a book is written well doesn't mean you have to like it. So we're going to talk about that. So I've got my notes. Couldn't see anything there because I read Song of the Dryad on my Kindle, so I don't have like a physical copy. I think I missed the initial release of this book, so by the time I had found Natalia's channel, she had already released Song of the Dryad, but I was like rewatching a bunch of her videos, especially like the book reveal, the cover reveal and everything when she got her proof copies, and I thought the cover was gorgeous. So that's what we're going to talk about first, is the cover. I thought the cover was gorgeous. Like, the book looked so good and I was so excited for it that I immediately put it on my Amazon wish list, and I was like, as soon as I'm buying some books again, I'm gonna get this one. And then just over as time passed and I had like a super long list of indie books, I had to like kind of change my thinking. Instead of just buying them all, I'm like, well, what if I don't like it? Because I hate buying things and not liking them. So I chose to purchase the ebook for a significantly less price than the paperback, and I'm glad I did. So again, here's the cover on the screen here. It's gorgeous. It very much represents the genre, the sort of I think it's really, I want to say it's almost a light fantasy, possibly portal fantasy, I think is the term, because the main character, Charlotte, travels to the Fae realm in the woods. They used to be like part of the world around us, but now they've isolated themselves to protect themselves, I believe. You kind of look at this cover and you see the, the foliage, the little bird, the deer, and you get like a very natural, like pretty feeling out of it, right? So without reading the story or anything, I thought, yeah, it's a pretty cover. And now that I've read the story, that's kind of where my opinion stops. Like, it's a pretty cover. I don't think it represents the story as well as it could. I would have loved to see more of the Dryad, more of the Fae. But that also kind of ties into my opinion on the book in general. So for what the book is, I think it does suit it, but it doesn't make me excited. So it's just a pretty cover. But the ivy on the text there, that's pretty cool. I do like that. So moving on to the overall story and plot. Charlotte, our main character. She's a senior in high school and she's practicing violin so she can go to a prominent music school. I think it's in Italy. But anyways, that's kind of her main focus. And one day rather, her mom goes missing. And she finds out that the Fae, particularly the Dryad who kind of protects the Greenwood area, kidnapped her mom. Just took her mom, and she's like, well, you, Charlotte, are descended from the Shrine Keepers, and since you can kind of sort of see us, like, she's been able to see and notice the fairies all her life, but after I think she was 8 years old when she had an encounter with a very scary one, she kind of like pushed everything to the back of her mind, okay? So the Dryad says, I'll give you your mom back, but you have to essentially collect the 5 fairy stones that have been stolen from us by the humans before Halloween, okay? So we're setting things up here. Obviously, Charlotte struggled because she was trying to ignore that part of herself. But obviously she wants her mom back, so there's a significant chunk of the story, like the first half, where she's struggling to figure out how to handle things and to find, like, how is she going to find the stones? How is she going to connect with the Fae and get their help? On one hand, I think that build-up is very realistic. However, it did feel very slow. Like, the first 60% of the book took me forever to read because I didn't feel like the story was progressing the way I expected it to. There was another author or another YouTuber who reviewed this book, and she made the comment that it's a YA, but it kind of reads like a middle grade. And I get that. It's very public broadcast program, like after school sort of vibe. While she is looking for the stones and trying to make connections with the Fae, she has the very real, again, like I feel like what the strongest point of the story is everything going on in reality was very realistic up until the end a little bit. Her father is distraught. He becomes pretty useless, to be honest, which was annoying because I'm just like, dude, I know, I can probably like sympathize, like you lost your wife, but you need to function as a human being and like do more than just feel sorry for yourself. So like the police are looking and they keep the story under wraps. So like Charlotte doesn't even tell her best friend. She doesn't tell anybody that, you know, all this stuff is going on. Her grandmother is basically takes over the household, and, you know, her grandmother's awesome. Just, you know, like initially she's a bit resistant to Charlotte's ideas of the Fae because Charlotte does eventually confront her, or not confront her, but like consult her or kind of like let her know what's going on. But then she does become one of Charlotte's main supports, and over time Charlotte meets more Fae and more people in town who are able to help her gather the stones. Art, this boy at school who does art, that still bugs me that his name is Art and he does art. Like, I mean, it's Arthur, but it's like, it's certain things like that that's like too much, you know, hitting the nail on the head. I'm just like, okay. Anywho, that's a character thing. So, you know, she eventually tells him, because he's all interested in like folklore and everything, so he's giving her books because he just thinks she's interested in it. And then eventually she gets his help to get some of the stones, and I think she only gets 2 stones by almost the 3/4 mark. Like, she finds the 3rd, I believe, but it felt like it took forever for her to get these stones. And then at the end it kind of just went boom, boom, boom. And it, you know, like she got this stone, she took it back. She got this stone, she took it back. And it was a lot of back and forth. Coming up, where this might be a little bit of a spoiler, so just brace yourself. If you don't want to hear the rest of the story, you can just kind of skip ahead till I talk about characters. Characters are next. She gets all the stones, which, okay, the last stone. She teams up with the Fuka, and this Fuka is this kind of like scary goat thing who she saw when she was 8 years old that night on Halloween, and that was the creature that scared her enough to be like, I'm not gonna go into the woods, and like, I'm not gonna believe in fairies. So she's scared of him, and her fear is very juvenile, even though she's like 17, which I guess fear can kind of be crippling enough to whatever degree. However, I feel like she not only overcame that fear super quick, because she essentially, I don't remember if she asked him for help or if he just suggested that he knew this stone, and she gets on his back and they more or less fly to a farm out in the middle of nowhere to get the last stone, right? And then they kind of team up and trick the farm guy so they can get into his house and get the stone, and then they have the 5th stone and they take it back, and the Dryad's like, you did your job. So it, like, I feel like that particular playthrough was maybe a chapter, maybe two, but you know, this whole time she was so scared of this Fuka. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, why am I scared? Like, he's kind of nice. And I'm like, the one like, not necessarily that I expected the Fuka to be like an evil fae and some like sort of villain, but it was a letdown to be, you know, have this fear try to build up and then just be like, oh, he's gonna help me out. So after that I would have rather had the story be her being forced to team up with the Fuka from the beginning, so that her understanding the fae through him, and then I guess slowly getting over her fear and slowly starting to trust him and slowly making that bond would have been a stronger story and more focused around the fae. Whereas this took place more in the real world than in that little fae world. I'm not really a contemporary person, so I appreciated the realism of it, but it wasn't the story I expected to read going into, you know, again with the cover being sort of more like fantastical and like nature. I wanted more of that than I got in Colorado. So moving on to the characters, because everything's gonna kind of tie in together. It's hard to categorize, but the characters, again, going back to that sort of like after school program, it was so clean. And, I mean, this is also part of the writing too. It was just written so crisp and so clean, and like, it's the smell of sunshine. And that's officially my least favorite phrase from this book, because everything smells like sunshine. And do you really smell sunshine? Like, I don't think that's how that works. But also, it's that kind of like floaty, sort of weird, I don't know, it's very clean, very fluffy sort of feeling to it. And the characters, I think, honestly, I wasn't attached to any of the characters. Like I said, I appreciated Granny the most because she was, you know, she stepped up and took control, or took, you know, helped out the family, took her father's place when he was being uber depressed. But as far as like Charlotte and Art, and I think Charlotte's friend name was Melanie, like all that school drama, it felt more or less superficial. And then there were certain descriptions which it almost made me insert Natalia as Charlotte a lot, because I know from watching Natalia's videos, the sort of like the vegan lifestyle and kind of that whole like embracing of nature and things like that, and that's very much reflected in Charlotte's character as well. So I guess knowing that the author is like that, I very much had Natalia as my vision of Charlotte. But it was, and there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle, but I feel like where it was like certain details were added to give Charlotte a character, it didn't give me any more for the story. Like, if those details weren't there, what she had for breakfast, I don't think I would have noticed or been like, well, what does she do in her life? But it was just a little bit more of a, I don't even know what you call it these days, but like just a very, it felt like a very light story as far as the characters went. So there's really not much I have to say about them. The whole father, like, essentially becoming depressed and unable to function while his wife was missing, almost felt a little over the top. Like, he did have a transition where he wasn't getting normal, but he wasn't as dramatic, and then he tried to kill himself, and that part didn't quite, like, you know, it was very selfish of him. And, you know, Charlotte was mad at him. She had she was able to stop him. I'm not gonna spoil like what actually happened, but she was able to stop him, and then she told him the truth about her mom being captured by the Dryad. And I think from that point in the book on, where Charlotte started to reveal to people more about what was actually going on, it started to feel a little fake as far as like people's reactions to it, because she goes to Art's mother, who was a witch, practicing witch, which she also had part in a group to help Charlotte get one of the stones. And it's hard to say sometimes when something is a plot convenience versus, you know, just part of the story. Like, it definitely felt very convenient that the people she had connections to were practicing witches or had knowledge about the Fae. So those are our people characters, right? Moving on to the Fae, we had primarily a brownie who took care of Charlotte's garden and apparently loves like milk and biscuits, which is very cute. And like he was a great brownie. Like she should have just teamed up with the brownie and gone through the Fae realm together, because like every time they were in a scene and it was the brownie's reaction to the naiads, like they're kind of like mermaids and other Fae, like it was so much more, you saw so much more with him there than with just Charlotte's like, oh, they were so beautiful and they had sharp teeth, but you see like the brownie has history with them or something. So the brownie was awesome. Love the brownie. There was the Dryad, obviously, who kidnapped Charlotte's mom, and I kept getting like evil vibes from her, because she would, you know, she kidnapped her mom. She's forcing Charlotte to get these stones, and every time Charlotte visits and brings a stone, or just kind of like tries to get information from her and to see her mom, because her mom's being like kept in like under a sleeping spell, sort of. Maybe it's just the way that I was reading it in my head, but it felt like kind of a very sinister way that the Dryad would talk. And then she would get close to Charlotte, and her scent of flower and sunshine would essentially take away Charlotte's suspicion and fear of her. So it almost felt like the Dryad was casting something over Charlotte, or at least putting a veil to hide her true self. But then in the end, again, spoiler, probably too late because I just said but then, that's who her character is. Like, she is intimidating. She scares the crap out of Art's dad, who's in charge of Nolan Enterprises, which is basically tearing down the forest, which is another reason why the Fae are upset, etc. This is kind of tying into the plot but the characters as well. So the reason why the Dryad couldn't address Mr. Nolan personally and threaten him the way she did at the end of the book was because he didn't believe in fairies. So she needed Charlotte to convince him. And for one, I don't think just a conversation of Charlotte being like, hey, you have to believe, I don't think that was a very convincing argument. And because Art ended up missing, also a spoiler. But when you read up to that point, you're like, oh yeah, he's gonna get napped. So, you know, Mr. Nolan and his practicing witch wife are worried about him, but his wife tries to like convince him of the Fae as well, and then all of a sudden, I think it was a special flower. It was a special flower that the Dryad gave to Charlotte. Tell him to eat this so he can see me. It was not a satisfying ending or resolution to that whole trouble, because this is kind of the part of the story at the end where it didn't feel believable why characters did things the way they did, or the reasoning behind the Dryad's like magic and stuff. So, but it is what it is. So eventually, like he sees the Dryad. She pretty much threatens him and says, "You better stop, or you know, we're gonna take you next," or something. And you know, so the project to cut down the forest stops. Art's back. The mom's back. Everybody's happy. And the end. All the reactions of people in the first 3/4 of the book felt very real, felt almost too real, and kind of took you out of like the fantastical part of the story. And then I just needed you so he would eat the flower and see me and I could threaten him. Because I feel like the Dryad has way more power than she's letting on to. But that's what happened. So, on to world building. This is going to be a really short section because everything with like Charlotte's town and everything, I feel like it was well described, but you didn't have to really build it because it was a city, like a small town in Colorado. In these contemporary settings, I don't feel like there needed to be much world building there. It was contemporary, and if there was anything special, I either didn't notice it or it didn't quite stand out because it just felt like that's the town in Colorado. Nothing was really particularly outstanding about it. The characters were built more than the town. However, the Fae realm, I thought it was very visually appealing. I mean, for on the page. I wanted to see more of it. I really just wanted Charlotte to stay in the Fae realm for her whole quest and meet all the Fae and travel with the brownie and essentially have a good old fantastical time. Not spend so long in real life drama. For me personally, more Fae realm would have been better. There is a small part, it's right at the end of the book, when an elf brings a journal to Charlotte from, one of her ancestors' journals, one of the past shrine keepers. And they spoke about her a couple times throughout the book, how she traveled around the Fae realms and did this and that. And even just the little hints of her history with that elf were intriguing enough. Like, if that became a story, I would read it, because I want to see again more of the Fae and more of that interaction within the Fae realm. So good job interlacing that little intrigue and pulling you in so you can do a possible like companion, not quite a sequel, but like a companion novel. I would definitely check that out, because I feel like, at least from what is built up of the Fae realm in this book, I would love to see more of it in a companion. More Fae, less people. More Fae, less people. Also our slogan. And the last section to talk about for this book, particularly, you know, because it is a self-published book or indie published book, is the writing and craft. This book with, I believe it was, she finished it before she was an editor herself, and I know she had someone edit it. It is so clean. There were no typography errors. The grammar, it was easy to read. It did feel more repetitive in the later chapters. I've seen this a lot where like the early ones are super crisp, nothing, and then I don't know if it's just my brain is connecting things more at the end, or if it actually is just appearing more. Like, not to say that the editor got tired of checking, but you know, certain descriptions were repeated. There was a lot of things smelling like sunshine. Yeah, it's still gonna bug me. But it was very clean, and the prose I thought was quite flowery. It was very descriptive, very vivid, but after a while, because I felt the story, like the plot progress was slow, I didn't want all the extra description. I'm like, go freaking get that stone. Stop telling me what the leaves on the street look like. Go get your stone. So it was written well, but for what I was hoping to get out of the book, because it seemed like, you know, the task was simple. Go get these 5 fairy stones. There would be more focus on that, but we were taken away from it so much that the beautiful prose became a hindrance to the progress of the plot, in my opinion. I didn't have any questions about what was being described or nothing. I didn't see any errors. I just thought the pacing ended up being really slow to the last 25%, and then it kind of really rushed to the ending. Overall, I did enjoy looking at a different way to write a story than, like, I would have written the story very differently. Obviously, based on my comments, you can kind of tell it. But as I said at the beginning of this video, just because a book is written well, like, as far as, you know, hitting all the story beats, and was there much character development? A teeny bit with Charlotte, maybe, but I feel like everybody else was more or less static. I feel like the story elements, the writing elements in particular, were very strong, but I guess the plot was a little bit misleading for someone who really loves being immersed into a fantasy world. There was, like I said, there was a bit too much time spent in the real world for me, and the plot didn't progress as quickly as I expected. And to touch on the YA or middle grade thing, for the most part, the story did feel like a middle grade. I read Percy Jackson earlier this year, and it read similarly, honestly. The only parts that felt YA at all were when she and Art started making out and getting very touchy, and like, because you can almost picture Charlotte as like a 12-year-old, but as soon as she starts kissing this boy, it's like, keep your shirt on, kid. It got a little steamy, especially like, I think she's like, oh, it's my first kiss, but then she's a little more aggressive than I expected, and it was kind of like, okay, like, hold off. You can kiss him again later. Which, I don't know. I think they probably kissed 2 or 3 times. And the one that was the most innocent was the last, like, at the end of the book when everything was okay. So, I don't know. That was, other than those scenes though, it could have been a middle grade. Or maybe like an early YA. Like, is that a thing? If new adults think an early YA baby thing? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a professional in that area, but I did enjoy the book. I don't think I would read it again. So based on my usual, like, if I have to give it a star rating, I'm kind of feeling like a 3.5. Like, as far as the writing itself goes, I'd probably be 4.5 because it was clean. I just felt like the pacing really, like I said, I keep saying the pacing for me was slow. It took me forever to get through half the book, and then it just went through at the end. The choices made toward the end of the book, as well as just the overall kind of flatness of the characters. I guess they weren't flat. That's because I can think of characters that are much more flat than them. But the clean fluffiness, it just wasn't what I really enjoy reading. My rating of like 3.5 stars is more of based on my what's it called? When you have a game that's like replayability, I think that's it. So usually I give a 5-star to something that I will read over and over again. Probably not like back to back. I don't do back to back reads, but I need it. I needed it. 4 stars. I definitely enjoyed it. I could read it again. If I get it, like if I have it on my shelf, awesome, because I'm probably gonna read it. But like, I enjoyed the story enough to recommend it to people. My 3 stars are, they were good, but either they weren't for me, which I feel like this is what this book is. It was good, but it just wasn't for me. It's not what I expected. It's not quite a Tamora Pierce story. So everything is compared to Tamora Pierce right now because she's awesome. 3 stars. It was either not for me or it just, again, I guess in this case, it just didn't have that oomph to make me want to read it, to make me want to like talk about it with everybody. 2 stars are definitely more issues going on with the book. And then, you know, 1 star probably. 1 star is probably I wish I didn't read it. I don't know. Fortunately, I haven't had any 1 or 2 stars yet. So that is my rambly review. Yeah, that was a long video. That is my rambly review for the Song of the Dryad by Natalia Leigh. Again, the link for her channel and for this book on Amazon is going to be below. So definitely check them out. I've heard and read other reviews of this book that people loved it. And again, it just wasn't for me, but I think a lot of people would enjoy this book. I just thought for myself it wasn't quite there for what I wanted it to be. But definitely check out her channel, and I have another review up already, so you can check that out as well to find another indie author's book. He's also on YouTube. And then the next review I'm doing is going to be The Wilderness by Ben Reeves, and thanks to my open request, essentially, I have another book after that, which is going to be Untamed by Stephen Harris. I'm about 30% through that book right now, and it's interesting. There's a lot of things to talk about with that book, so definitely look forward to that review, and then the next video as well, as I said, The Wilderness by Ben Reeves, because that's a nice little fun story. And if you yourself have published a book, if you're a self-published indie author, and you would like me to review your book and read it, definitely comment below, send me a message. I have all my social media links in the description, so you can message me, preferably on Instagram if you have one. If not, I do have Tumblr and Twitter, so you can message me there. But just let me know, and if I'll put it on my list. Most likely at this point, I'm not saying no to anybody, which don't abuse that privilege, people. Don't abuse it. Not that this is a big channel or anything, but I'd like to help you out here. I do have these 2, and then I have a few more coming up as well, but I'm kind of waiting on certain dates to be announced before I do those. And then, so if you enjoy, again, I know I'm circling around, sorry guys, but if you enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, because there's going to be more book reviews for indie authors, and obviously my stuff personally with the novel that I'm writing, and I finally finished the 4th draft. Now it's the kind of my beta readers are getting it, and I'm just getting nervous. So there's my novel stuff, and then my art stuff as well on my channel, so you can definitely check some of that out, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.